Hi, it's me. I'm in Mountain View. I'm in my hotel room. It's still dark outside, I think. I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I'll survive. I'm a survivor. I wanted to talk to you today, excuse me, about a book I read on the airplane while I was flying cross country. It is This Common Secret by Dr. Susan Wicklund. Dr. Wicklund is an abortion provider, and I use the A word because apparently if you try to talk about abortion or women's health or reproductive rights, you are being controversial. We're having a Authors at Google talk next week with Kathleen Turner and Gloria Feld. Kathleen Turner has a new autobiography out. And Gloria Feld is the past president of Planned Parenthood. And I put the announcement out yesterday, like I do when I'm hosting a talk. And immediately I got a response from somebody talking about how controversial Gloria Feld is because she's the former president of Planned Parenthood. And there was all this right to life mumbo jumbo that's in there, which I have very little patience for to begin with. But I responded tactfully, pointing out that she's the co-author of the book. So I wanted to talk to you about this because in the 1990s I was an escort at abortion clinics in Pittsburgh. I was just coming out as a gay man, and I was looking for a supportive community, and people that deal with reproductive health and women's rights tend to be supportive of the gay and lesbian community. So I began to, this was the time of Operation Rescue. The abortion clinics, two of them in Pittsburgh, two of the three of them in Pittsburgh, were right around the corner from my house in a neighborhood called East Liberty, and I lived in Point Breeze. And I was appalled that for large segments of Saturdays, my fire department, my police force was preoccupied with these people trying to stop a woman from doing something she had a legal right to do. And I always worried that if there was a fire or an emergency, that there would be a delay in getting emergency services to me because these people were doing something that was totally outrageous, in my opinion. So I began escorted abortion clinics, and it did help me come out. But reading Dr. Wicklund's book, it brought back all those memories. Dr. Wicklund was really harassed by fundamentalist Christian groups called the Lambs of Christ, the Armies of God. These are also the groups that were attacking the clinics in Pittsburgh. One time I arrived at the clinic, I was the first one to get there because, as I said, I lived around the corner, and it was Yom Kippur, and they had decided that they would attack all three clinics in Pittsburgh simultaneously because everyone knows it's the Jewish doctors that perform abortions. So when I got there, I saw this mayhem going on, and I immediately looked around and saw a woman who was just terrified. And I approached her, and she identified herself as a patient, and we formed, as more escorts came, we formed an amoeba. We took her to a bakery, which we eventually got kicked out of because the antis came and harassed her there, even though we were buying food and they weren't. And I ended up driving her to the only open abortion clinic that day that had managed to get the antis out. On the way down, she began to talk. And it turns out that she had a disease, diabetes, and she was insulin dependent, and her body was basically a mess because of her dependence on insulin and her diabetes. And the doctor said that if she tried to carry this pregnancy to term, her kidneys would fail and she would probably die. Very steel magnolias. Anyway, she had come to this choice and was really afraid for her health and that she couldn't afford to come back another time. Well, as we exited the garage, the clinic was next door to a gym, so I said to her, look, pretend we're boyfriend and girlfriend, we're going to this gym over here, kind of walk toward the gym, and they'll leave you alone. They may come over and try and give you a pamphlet, but they're not going to harass you. And we did that, and as soon as we got to the door, I cut in, and we made it behind police lines, and she went up to the clinic. I sat with her for maybe 5 minutes until she calmed down, and then I went my merry way. I hope that she's fine now. But Dr. Wicklund tells a lot of stories like this. She tells stories of an incest victim who's 14 years old in the book, maybe 12, and how she had her father arrested. She talks about women that she turned away from the clinic because she felt their decision wasn't made. These are all the real stories behind abortion, and it's a wonderful book. But for me, it brought back all the memories from being kind of involved, but not as nearly as involved as Dr. Wicklund was. I wanted to bring Dr. Wicklund to Authors at Google, and I couldn't because even though our team members wanted to read the book, they were afraid of the type of reaction I got from a coworker when we just brought Gloria Felt in to talk about Kathleen Turner's autobiography. Very, very strange opinions around this one word and this one thing that is going on. Last year, the Supreme Court overturned a decision that they had made just 3 or 4 years earlier on something called partial birth abortion. Partial birth abortion is one of these rhetorical terms used by the anti-choice movement to try and limit a woman's right to choose. It is the first time in the history of the Supreme Court that they have outlawed a specific medical technique that is used only in cases to preserve the life and the health of the woman. Okay, the reason that they do this particular technique is that it's a late-term fetus that has some abnormality or the woman's health is in jeopardy, and the only other way to do the abortion is to cut the woman open along her uterus, spread her open, and remove it. What they have to do here is instead they cut the fetus apart and remove it through, do a vaginal removal, which is much less invasive, much less intrusive. And it's done in some very, very, very small amount of cases. But when you hear the antis talk about it, it's common, it's, you know, a horrendous thing to do, and all these, and it's like, look, it just doesn't happen that often. But there was some really, really bad rhetoric by Justice Kennedy, who wrote the opinion, and apparently Kennedy has this way of being overly floral, or overly rhetorical in his opinions. And he talked about how women regret their choice of abortion. It's like, how the fuck do you know, man? So anyway, I wanted to talk to you about this book. I highly recommend people read it. It's a wonderful book. And when you see some of the stories there about the blockades, about the harassment, about the violence, I've been there. I've been there when the clinics were firebombed. I've been there when I've spent a weekend on the roof of a clinic that had been pickaxed so that when it was raining, all the water was flowing into the clinic, destroying property. I think it was something like $30,000 for a new roof and like another $20,000 in clinic repairs. Huge amounts of money that was being spent in order to try and stop women from exercising their legal right. And it's a difficult choice for women. And anyway, enough of a gay man talking about women's rights. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.